It's the Mike Missanelli Podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Mike Missanelli Podcast. Yes, the Mike Missanelli Podcast available on the BetRivers Network, sponsored by the great people at BetRivers. Download that app. You got NFL playoff action coming your way. You got to download that app now. Get your bets in. It's a fantastic app. It's real easy to use. Podcast episode number 41, Thursday, January 12th, 2023. And we are in a holding pattern here. The Philadelphia Eagles get a bye in the NFL playoffs, so we get to stand around or sit around and watch the playoff games, to watch everybody eliminate each other and then get an opponent. So let's just look at the potential opponents for their first game after we talk about where they are right now. Where are the Eagles right now? Because there are a lot of people that think that they lost a little luster going into the playoffs, even though they are the number one seed in the NFC. So let's look at why that's happening out there. Well, why it's happening is really based on the health of two important players. And we're talking about the quarterback, Jalen Hurts. We're talking about the right tackle, Lane Johnson. So let's look at it. I'm trying to figure out whether Nick Sirianni is playing a ruse on people. You know, I was kind of shocked that he said that, boy, Jalen's really hurting. He was really hurting in that game, blah, 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 leading people to believe that in 2 weeks there might not be enough time for him to heal to be the Jalen Hurts that made that offense hum. Because without him being the Jalen Hurts of old, the offense is going to slow down a little bit. So much of what they do offensively, even with the success of the other guys, is based on what he does with zone reads and RPOs and the fact that he has a threat to carry the football at any time. And when he carries the football, the Eagles are always +1 because there's nobody that can account for Jalen Hurts except the safety who's 20 yards back. So he's got to be 100%. Now, I'm thinking, why would Sirianni admit that he's hurting? And then I started to overthink it and say, he's doing that because he wants the other team to think he's hurting. And somehow that'll mess up their plans, or that'll get them comfortable in the fact that he's not going to be running the football. And so they could play the running back that he puts the ball in the belly of, or they could play the receiver is going to go out on that little pattern. I don't know, but I got a feeling it's that. And that maybe he's not hurting. Because if he is hurting, they're in trouble, maybe not in this game, but certainly in maybe an NFC title game. And if he's not hurting, then maybe they're playing a psychological game to give the Eagles the edge. But there's no question in my mind that he's got to be the Jalen Hurts who is not afraid to do the things that Jalen Hurts did all year in this game coming up in a couple of weeks. Now, the Lane Johnson situation, it's very problematic to me. I can't tell you how he's going to be. They're fitting him with a brace. He's got a core muscle tear. It needs surgery. Anytime a core muscle tendon needs surgery, it can't possibly be at 100%, even if you put a brace on. So it worries me how much he can hold up against a good rushing football team that they may play. So there it is. It's that in a nutshell. It's Hurts and it's Lane Johnson. And there are two other little things that are bugging me. One is the health of Miles Sanders, who's been banged up. His knee is a little banged up. Will he be 100%, or at least a semblance of 100%, where they can run every aspect of that offense? The running game, the passing game, the tight end, the quarterback being able to run. All that matters. And here's the other big thing that matters. They run a 4-man front mostly, and that's how they've been successful. They don't blitz a lot. They don't run a 5-man front a lot. They rely on the 4 men getting to the quarterback, putting pressure. So far, that's worked. They lead the league in sacks, right? But here's the thing. To do that, you've got to count on really good coverage on the back end. And right now, the guy who's leaking the most oil is Darius Slay, who's supposed to be their best corner cover. He has not played well in the last 3 games. So whoever they play, we're going to have to count on these elements to get them by. Now, they're going to get back Josh Sweat, it looks like. So that's a help. So that rotation there with the defensive ends and with the year Reddick is having, I'm okay with. The linebackers in coverage, lately that's leaked. And, of course, Slay has leaked. So at this point, I don't know where they stand. And maybe they deserve to have a little luster taken off them as the number 1 seed until they convince people in that first game on whoever it's going to be that they're worthy of that number 1 seed and they're ready to win an NFC title. All right, let's look at the potential opponents for the first game because there's 4 of them. Now, it's going to be a home game, so that gives them a decided advantage. They're going to face the lowest seed that survives in that first round game at Lincoln Financial Field. That could be Seattle, the 7th seed, the Giants, the 6th seed, the Cowboys, the 5th seed, or the Bucs, the 4th seed. Now, for me, the most likely opponent, and I've been saying it for weeks, is the Cowboys, unless the Cowboys lose to the Bucs, which is very possible, and unless the Giants upset the Vikings, which is very possible. So here are our matchups for this weekend. Let's start with the Saturday game. Seattle, 7th seed at the 2 seed, the 49ers. The 49ers are a 9.5-point favorite. This game is 4:30 on Fox on a Saturday. I don't think Seattle has any chance to win this game. The 49ers at 9.5, maybe that line's a little too high. There's no way the 49ers are losing to Seattle. We'll analyze that game in a second. The 6th seed, the Giants, at the 3 seed, the Vikings. The Vikings are a home field -3. Can't get much information from that. 4:30 Sunday on Fox. And then finally, the Cowboys are a road favorite, -2.5 at the Bucs, the 4 seed. That'll be a Monday night game, 8:15 on ESPN, ABC. And, of course, in the AFC, the Dolphins, 7 seed at the 2 Bills, Sunday, 1 p.m. CBS. The Bills are -13. That's because the Dolphins have a quarterback problem. I mean, who's going to be their starter? Is it going to be Kyler Thompson or is it going to be Teddy Bridgewater? Does it really matter? I think the Bills romp in that game. Dolphins, I don't think, have a chance. The Ravens, 6 seed at the 3 Bengals. I don't think the Ravens have a chance either. And especially there's this mystery of Lamar Jackson, whether he's going to play or not. Obviously, they're better when he plays. But he's in a situation where he's got a contract. Does he want to play hurt? Who knows what's going to happen? We still don't know here. It's Thursday. We don't know who the starting quarterback is for the Ravens. In any event, the Bengals are an 8.5-point favorite. That's a Sunday night game on NBC at 8:15. And finally, the Chargers at -2 at the 6-seeded Jaguars, Saturday, 8:15 NBC. The Jaguars are a nice story. The Chargers are playing really good football right now. I think that might be the easiest game of the week to play, to be honest with you. I'd like the Chargers to go in there. And win that game against the Jaguars. The Jaguars, they're not. It's too much of a story now. It's too much of a Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson romance, all that thing. They're going to fall on their face. All right, let's look at the games. Let's look at Seattle and the 49ers right out of the chute to see who has the edge in this game. Now, listen, the Seattle Seahawks defense can be picked apart. They've had a lot of up and down games where they've given up a lot of points. Conversely, the 49ers, best defense in the NFL. The Seahawks have scored 20 points in their 2 total matchups versus San Francisco. What's going to change now? The Niners have won 10 straight. Here's the question. They got a quarterback who's green. So far, he's survived. Brock Purdy, can he survive with the bright lights on? He's 5-0 as a starter. This is a different ballgame in the playoffs. So, fortunately, they have a team that they're much better than, and maybe he can, sow some oats in this game and get a little playoff experience that won't hurt the Niners down the road when they have to play somebody really important. Niners swept Seattle this year 27-7 in week 2 at home, and then 21-13 in week 15. That's a solid 49er game, in my opinion. Maybe not as a cover, but certainly the Niners are not going to get upset in that game. All right, let's look at the Vikings and the Giants. Very interesting game. The Vikings have played in 11 one-score games this year. They've won all of them. Now, that tells you a little something about the clutchness of this team. And let's add to that. The Vikings have been tough in the fourth quarter. This is a wild stat. They're third in the NFL with +9. 30 NFL +9 on drives that have started in the fourth quarter or overtime. And in that, they have the lowest turnover margin of any team in the NFL. So although they're flimsy at times because they've given up the most points per play in the NFL and they're ranked dead last in the league in yards allowed, when it's late, they seem to clutch up. So that's helpful. That's good experience playing late if you're in a close game. If you got that kind of confidence that you're going to win those games because you execute better than everybody else. The Vikings are going to be without their starting center, their starting right tackle. The Giants have to get pressure on Cousins. It's really as simple as that, and that's an indication that they could get pressure on the quarterback. The Giants, however, have only one win against teams with a winning record. That was the Ravens earlier this year. And their point differential this whole season, the Giants, is a -6. So I don't know how to call this game, to be honest with you. But I originally thought that the Giants could upset them. Now I don't. I think the Vikings now are the play in that game. All right, let's look at the other NFC game, Tampa Bay Dallas, Monday night, 8:15. Dallas has given up 27.2 points per game in the last 5 games. They only allowed 17.2 points per game in the previous 12. Their defense stinks right now. Meanwhile, the Bucks have not scored. they were 18.3 points per game to 28.8 in the last 5 games. So they did get a 30-point effort a couple games ago, but their offensive line is banged up. Their offense has been feeble. Although in that game in Week 17, Mike Evans busted loose for 3 TDs of long yards. And here's the thing. The Cowboys are not a great team on the road. And Brady is 7-0 versus Dallas in his career. So basically, I don't know who to call in this game, Tampa Bay, Dallas. I don't want to give that much deference to Brady, and all of a sudden he's going to find magic. But the Cowboys, I can't count on them. So, Darren, I need some help. How do you look at this game?
This is the type of game where if Dallas loses, this is a heads will roll loss. I mean, every year it's the Cowboys. Can you get through the second round? Can you make something of this season? There's a lot of expectations on that franchise. I think Dallas wins the game. I really do. Tampa's defense is just there's nothing about Tampa's defense that really scares me right now. Tampa has no running game. Yes, Brady in the last couple of weeks has lit it up. They have Mike Evans. Dallas' secondary is suspect, a lot of injuries, but they can't run the ball. And I think Dallas' defense is going to tee off on Brady.
You're going to take the Cowboys, which means now let's look at the other games because we're trying to find the Eagles' opponent. So the Cowboys, as the 5th seed, have survived. Do the Giants beat the Vikings?
I've come around on this game. I thought earlier in the week, no shot. Giants aren't going to win that game. New York is well coached. They've got a good running game, and Daniel Jones is playing the best. I think they have a shot to go into Minnesota and win. Minnesota, 11 games, 11-0, one-score game.
Well, they have a shot. Will they win?
No, I'm going chalk, Minnesota. But I think New York's going to keep it close.
You just changed your mind in 3 seconds.
Well, I was no shot earlier in the week. I think New York can actually give them a game.
All right,
I think
it's going to be a game that Minnesota still wins.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's look at the AFC. Let's start with the first game, the Saturday NBC game, Saturday night, the Jags and Chargers. Can the Jags slow down Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler? They're the 2 most productive players on offense, and they've got a quarterback who's really playing well. This is a match of 2 young quarterbacks. One is more advanced than the other. And I know Trevor Lawrence has made some great strides, but the kid playing for the Chargers is I just think at a different level at this point. So I give the Chargers the edge. The Jags do rank 3rd in pressure rate, which could put a little heat on them. And and Trevor Lawrence has gotten some good production from guys like Christian Kirk and Evan Engram and Zay Jones. But the Chargers are getting healthy and they're peaking. And they got Joey Bosa back. And they got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, maybe. Now, here's the problem with the Chargers. They played their starters really late in that game last week, a meaningless game, and Mike Williams hurt his back. So that could be a big factor. But I think the Chargers are the choice here. I know, Darren, you like the Jags. You like that whole story.
Well,
right?
The Chargers coach is good for a blunder a game. Like, he's a really smart guy, but he outthinks himself way too much. And I could see Staley making a bad call in that game. Jaguars' defense is really good. I'm not that wild on Lawrence this year. I think he's still got a lot to grow. But Jacksonville's defense is really good. They'll keep him in that game. That's the smallest line. I think it's the shortest line of the week, too. It's only one.
-2. -2.
Yeah. I think that's a good game. Jacksonville can win that game.
All right. Justin Herbert, I just think, is going to make more plays than Trevor Lawrence at this point. All right, let's move on to the Sunday games here. And the Sunday games, let's start with the Bills-Dolphins, 1:00 game. I mean, I don't know what to say about this game. Who's the quarterback for Miami, and does it matter? The Dolphins are very blitz-heavy, man coverage team. The Bills rush 4. They have good cover schemes. Bills are 6th in defensive EPA. The Dolphins' defense is ranked 26th. Miami beat the Bills week 3, though, a long time ago, 21-19. And that's when they had a starting quarterback. Buffalo won in week 15, 32-29. So the Dolphins have played them tough. And they've got a leaky quarterback. Like Josh Allen last year in the playoffs was amazing. 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. At 2 games, he threw for 600 yards. He's had 5 games this year with 2 interceptions. And the Bills also lead the league in drops. They've had 31 drops this year, and they have 27 turnovers, which is 3rd in the league. So they're not as solid as you might think, but there's no way that the Dolphins are going to win this game. All right, let's move on now to the Bengals and Ravens Sunday night game on NBC. I love the Bengals in this game. They're 8.5-point favorites. Lamar Jackson, I don't know. Who knows if he's going to play? I mean, they're 8-4 with him. They're 2-3 with their backups. With Jackson, they average 25 points a game. Without him, they're at half that at 12.5. The Ravens have the worst deep ball passing defense in the league, and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase should be able to exploit that for the Bengals. The teams did split this year, though. Cincinnati won 27-16 on Sunday, last Sunday. The Ravens won in week 5, 19-17. And the Bengals have been really inconsistent. Haven't strung 2 halves together in a really long time. Last 3 games, for instance, 3 points in week 15 in the first half. They had 0 points in the second half, week 16. They had 3 points in the second half last Sunday. Their offensive line has been erratic because of injuries. But Joey Burrow, your man, should be able to bring this home for the Bengals. Do you like the Bengals to cover the 8.5, or will the Ravens be in the game?
No, I think Cincinnati wins this game going away. It doesn't look like Lamar Jackson's going to play. That knee is still just I don't think you're going to see him again this year because of the contract. That's a big part of it. That's a big matzo ball sitting out there.
All right. So there you go. You got Seattle at the 49ers, the Giants at the Vikings, Dallas at the Bucks. I will predict right now that Niners win, Vikings win, Dallas wins. You're seeing the Cowboys when you play football again at Lincoln Financial Field the following weekend. In the AFC, I'm going to go chalk all the way. Bills, Bengals, and Chargers. Now, there's probably going to be an upset in there, but I can't figure out what that would be at this particular time.
It's the Mike Missanelli Podcast on the BetRivers Network.
All right, my next guest on the Mike Missanelli Podcast, a very, very special guest. We worked together for many years on a very successful show. I believe that station was 97.5, The Fanatic. And, it's funny because every time I'm around town these days, people ask me, what's going on with Natalie? Where's Natalie? So, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Natalie Egenolf, our special guest for today. Hello, Nat.
Oh, Mike, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. It was so funny when you texted me and asked me to come on. I'm not kidding. I was literally scrolling through your podcast episodes to see which ones I missed because I listened to every episode. So it was just, I felt like it was like some sort of like karmatic thing. And I'm just so happy to be here.
Oh, that's nice that you were checking on the old podcast.
Yes.
I like to hear that because podcasting is really interesting because you never know. You throw it out in space, and you never know who's listening, as opposed to radio where you got like constant feedback like every 2 minutes from callers. So this is all new to me, and we're now on our 41st episode, believe it or not, of the Mike Missanelli Podcast, sponsored by BetRivers. So Nat, let's first of all tell the world what you're doing these days.
So right now I am still cranking out my podcast, The Lipstick League, with Nicole Mahalik from WXTU. Our tagline is where sports and pop culture come to play. So, you've been on my podcast. It's one.
Yes, it was. I enjoyed the being on your podcast.
Yeah, we had a ton of fun. So right now that's what I'm doing. And I am in the middle of kind of figuring out what's next. I have a little bit of an idea, but I can't necessarily talk about it yet. But the people will hopefully be able to hear me again. That's the goal, and Mike, it'll never be like what it was when we did it. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, so let's talk about those days and the origin of how you joined the show, because we were kind of in a state of limbo. Jason Bertitas has been the producer, and they moved him to do a show with Anthony, and so we had to find a new producer and actually another element to the show. And so tell us about the origins of how it was all put together and how you joined the show.
So they brought me on as a part-time sports update anchor in the end of 2016, which I can't believe it was that long ago, right? It feels like a lifetime ago. The end of 2016. And it was part-time on your show. And then they brought me into the office. I think it was actually September of 2017, because it was right around my birthday. And they said, we'd like to make you a full-time part of Mike's show. And I was floored. I didn't think that I was good enough for your show yet, Mike. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I said, really? You want me to be a full-time sports update anchor on the Mike Missanelli show? It was such an honor. And then they said, yeah, and then we're going to put you on TV. And I said, oh my God, like, I can't believe it. And then that's honestly how it happened. So I saw January 8th was our anniversary, actually. January 8th would have been like, I think 5-6 years that we would have been kicking out episodes and, doing our thing. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened. It was very, I think, fortuitous. I felt like I had a little bit more time to go before I was slotted, but I was ready for it. And I mean, it was the best. It was the time of my life. I think that we did such good radio and we really entertained people. And, we did it during the pandemic, Mike, which was insane. And I look back now and, we didn't necessarily think about it, I don't think, when we were doing it, but we just did it. And we did sports talk when there was no sports.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people forget about how difficult that was to put together a show every day, but we somehow pulled it off. Now, interesting about the COVID part is that that was the era where people were staying at home. They were ordered to stay at home, and the way they figured it out was that you would stay at home for a little while because you were in the booth with Tyrone. And the way they figured it, since we had our own individual booths, we wouldn't have any kind of a problem as far as working with coworkers because we were isolated anyway. But so they decided to isolate you by you doing it at home, which was really interesting time because you were still part of the show. You were doing it from home and we were in the studio.
Well, I was at home. I remember I would lay on my couch and I had my headphones on and I had the microphone and you guys couldn't see me. So I felt like sometimes I had to I would be like, guys, I'm still here. I'm still here. Remember, Ginger was barking.
Yeah. You heard your dog barking in the background. It made for all interesting radio because during the pandemic, we had like that would be entertaining. Your dog barking.
Oh yeah,
we had to have that as an element of entertainment for the show.
Oh my God, yeah. And I feel like it was such a crazy time, and I just look back and I just think about it, and I feel like that's when we did our best radio. We really. I tell people all the time. They said, "What was it like, doing the Mike Missanelli show?" I said, "Well, can you tell me another television show where it's 4 hours of unscripted improv with 3 people? Because you can't. There still is no other show like it. There was no other show like it. And that's what we did. It was 4 hours of unscripted improvisation.
It's exactly what it was. It's funny because I had Angelo on a podcast and he scripts every minute of his show. We did not. We call topics led like caller bring up a topic and that led us into a completely different zone of conversation. And that was the conversation that most people remembered more than anything, was when we when we go off script and improvise and talk about stuff that was, just like people talking on the street or at a bar or something.
Mike, we did an entire show. Do you remember on baseball netting? We did an entire show.
Yeah, because and here was the onus of that show. I got a ticket on the first row, behind a dugout, to the right of the dugout. A first row ticket. Now everybody thinks the first row ticket is there. There was the netting, the cable that held the netting together was a thick cable, and it was right in my view. And I said, this seat is the worst effing seat that I've ever sat in, and I'm in the first row. And people are going, "Oh, yeah, Mr. Big Time, you're in the first row." I swear to God, the cable was right in front of me. I had to put my head above the cable and below the cable to see a pitch being delivered. It was horrible. And so, and my position was that seat should have a rebate.
Yeah.
That should be a lower price seat instead of a higher price seat.
And it was when they were having the conversations about extending the netting.
Yes.
So I remember I think this was one of those shows. I think it was the All-Star week, right? Another week where there's no sports at all. But I remember we had people calling in and they were like, maybe if you put the poles here and here, and maybe if you use this type of net. Like I feel like there were so many shows, especially, where we just pulled like blood from a rock and we just made it happen. And people really loved it. I mean, like you said, everybody asks you what I'm doing. Everybody says to me, they're like, I until I die, I swear to God, I can never go out without people going, "Yo, Nat, where's Mikey Miss?" And I'm like, I don't know. He's probably home. I don't know where he is. He's probably doing something until the day I die. For years and years and years. Yo, Nat, where's Mikey Miss? I'm like, he's somewhere. He's fine. I promise.
Yeah. The perception is that we were always tied at the waist, no matter where we were.
Yeah.
We work together. We do have lives that we leave work. So you're right. Those kind of conversations was blossomed off. And I mean, like something simple as, because I know my position was, okay, you want to put the net around there? You're obstructing people's view. So the first 15 rows should give you a lesser price ticket.
Yes.
It was only logical. Yeah. All I did was speak logic. Like people say, "Oh, you're a hot take guy." I'm not a hot take guy. I was completely logical. If you can't see and your view is going to be obstructed, you should have a lesser price ticket. I
always tell people about that, about you too. I say it. I'm like, first of all, the party of Mike is the party of Mike, and I subscribe to it. And second of all, like, logic always rules, and there's nobody more logical on the planet than you. And that's why the party of Mike is always right, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the logic always prevails.
People complicate the party of Mike because it is totally based on base logic. Like not like 7 levels of intellectualism logic. It's base logic.
Yes.
And people sometimes have trouble understanding base logic. All right, so let's first of all, the right thing for them to do at this particular stage is to put that show back together. But since management over there seems to be a little lacking in ingenuity, that probably will never happen again. So that's my little my little editorial comment on this. So now let's
you said it, not me, but I might agree.
Yeah. So well, I think it's evident to people. But anyway, let's look now at a golden moment of the show where we were debating. The Bryce Harper thing went on forever. Are they going to get him or are they going to not? And there were people saying, "Oh, you don't get it. That's too much." I love the people say, "Oh, it's too much." And then all of a sudden it breaks when you're doing the sports update. So tell us about that moment.
Well, you know what's funny, Mike, is that morning I had been, I mean, like, it was kind of torturing me, that news, wondering who they were going to get, whether it was going to be Machado or if it was going to be Harper. Remember, Machado came to town and all those people were outside begging him to come.
Yeah, he was. The door was locked.
Yes, the door.
The door. He was trying to get into the building. It was locked.
That's right. I forgot about that. Oh, only in Philly. But yeah, so the door was locked, and I remember just like poring over the reports. I mean, daily for months. It was going on for months. And I wanted our show to get that news first. I really, really did. And that morning, a report came out that said the Phillies aren't going to spend the money. And I vividly, vividly remember thinking to myself, it's not going to happen. That was the day when I thought to myself, it's not going to happen, because the report came out. It said the Phillies aren't going to spend the money. And I said, you know what? Here we are. Very typical Phillies behavior. They never spend the money, right? That's been the Phillies' problem. That was the Phillies' problem for years and years and years. Now they're just emptying, their pockets, which is amazing. We've been waiting for this forever. But for years and years and years, that was always their problem. And I thought, you know what? It's just another year in Phillies baseball. They're not going to spend the money. He's going to go somewhere else. I vividly remember thinking that morning, because that report came out. So I'm sitting in the studio. Ty and I are sitting in the studio, and you were on the phone with Tim from Lancaster. I'm pretty sure talking about the Flyers, because, well, we'll get to that. I do need to reiterate how you always talked about the Flyers, and people thought that we didn't. And I still will die on that mountain. But you were talking about the Flyers with Tim from Lancaster. And Ty looks at me and he goes, Nat, Heyman, tweet. And he's like slamming his hand on the desk. And I look at the tweet and he hits the sounder, and that was it. And I just, as the news broke, was when
the breaking news sounder, that the music that we used to play, boom, I think it was from the Extra show.
Yes, he hit the breaking news sounder, and I was reading it as I was learning it, and I was telling you as like it all happened in very, very, very real time, instantaneously. And I didn't actually, sometimes I forgot that we were on television. I actually forgot all the time that we were on television, because our cameras weren't big. They were just these little cameras
They're little pods. They were little pods. You can always forget that you were on the air.
Yeah, they were little pods. And I just, when I told you, that was my genuine reaction, because I was so excited. Because that morning I was thinking, we're not getting them. They're not going to spend the money. And then, my God, I had no idea. And I wasn't even thinking that my reaction would have the reaction that it did. But it was...
Yeah, your reaction went national almost.
It did.
But it was so funny, because we had been so grumbly about them not signing him, and here all of a sudden they signed him, and we were like, huh? So
it was almost disbelief. It was disbelief.
Yeah, it was crazy. All right, so we did have a really good chemistry, good vibe, because we knew how to pick up each other and talk about like carrots in a grocery store or some other stupid thing that we would venture off into. And then all of a sudden you call us out to lunch, and you're really upset about it, and you're telling us that you got an offer that you really couldn't refuse.
Yeah. I had found the position with Parks Casino. They were looking for somebody to kind of spearhead this new digital side of the online gambling space that they were launching. And I felt like it was the right move for me at the time, honestly. And, the company did nothing to keep me. So that's neither here nor there, but they didn't. And so it was probably in my entire life the hardest thing I ever had to do. I could still cry thinking about it. I still to this day wonder if it was the right thing. But I don't have any regrets, because you got to do what you got to do for yourself in life and in moments and in your career. And it was a good opportunity. Wasn't the right fit for me, I don't think. I think that I am a sports talk radio gal at heart, and that's just what I do. And
yeah, but let me just say this at the time, because you told us about the offer, and we emphatically thought it was the right thing for you to do. And because in my world, you don't turn down opportunities that will compensate you a lot more than what you're being compensated for. And let's face it, the station that we worked for, I would be kind in saying they're rather frugal. And
That's
so
mildly.
to advance your career monetarily and be still in the kind of the media business was a no-brainer for you to do. So never beat yourself up for that, because you advanced your career and you advanced your financial situation, which is what we all try to do in this business. So and I know it was difficult for you, and it was difficult for us because it put a crimp in the show where we had to kind of readjust. And but here's the thing: you're still out there doing things, and if you're out there doing things, another opportunity is going to come to you. There are plenty of opportunities out there, and another colossal opportunity is going to come to you eventually. So just hang in there and let it happen.
Yeah, no, I know it will. And I mean, again, if I didn't truly, you know me, Mike, like I lead with my heart. I can't not. I wish I didn't sometimes, but I lead with my heart. And if my heart didn't feel that it was the right thing to do, I wouldn't have gone. And you and Tyrone, I remember that morning. I think you both thought I was sick because I called you home to lunch,
Yeah.
and they thought I was dying or something.
Yeah, and it was very difficult for you to tell us that, like you were letting us down, and we both looked at each other and said, "Well, this is a great opportunity for you." So, even though it's we'd love to keep the show together the way it's going because it's going pretty well. We couldn't deny you that kind of an opportunity, and we were all for you taking that opportunity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, I thought you did the right thing. Now, yeah, a lot of people. For some reason ask you and ask anybody that I've ever worked with, what's it like to work with me? Even Darren, who's our producer, gets questions. What's it like to work with me? And I always like scratch my head at that, like I'm some kind of like I'm Godzilla of some sort, right? And I go, I'm a guy who just wants to do a good
Yep.
show, And so when people ask you that question, what did you always tell them?
I just say you're the best. And I mean, I feel like people are like, they think that I'm like lying or not being not being authentic, but I'm like, no. And I think because, Mike, your persona is so large, right? And you are who you are. And I say this all the time. I'm like, I always say the reason that Mike and I work so well together is because I'm who I am and you are who you are. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, we couldn't be other people if we tried, right? We're not fugazis. We're not fugazis at all. And
No, you're absolutely right. And sometimes, like, that's really hurt me in my life that, that I am who I am. But
I'm learning that too.
yeah,
But I would rather be that way than not. And you actually,
because you have to look at yourself in the mirror. You have to be honest with yourself. That's the only person you can really be honest mostly with is yourself. And if you're not being honest with yourself, then what are you doing? Turning away from the mirror?
probably.
You have to kind of look, stare into the mirror. So
But that's what I tell people. I said, I loved walking in. I mean, that's what I miss the most is kind of like going into work every day, and then, you would come in and we'd sit there and, like, we'd like shoot the shit, and then we'd talk about what you were going to do. But people don't understand that you're actually just like this chill, mild mannered kind of dude who just like kicks it. You listen to your music. You're like, yo, Nat, like, listen to this new song from The National. And then, like, next thing you know, we'd go
yeah.
on air, you'd fire up the microphone, then you'd be like, and this is what's going on. Like, it's not that we're two different people, but like, you are just you. And I always tell people that I'm like, Mike was the best because I would rather work with somebody who's real and authentically themselves all the time than somebody who's going to put on airs or be fake, and you don't know what you're getting, right? And you don't know if they're genuine. Like, it was always a pleasure to know that I was walking in, I'm like, yeah, Mike's going to be Mike. And that's all that we needed.
Let me bring Darren in for this. So Darren, you've said this. There's a difference between radio Mike and non-radio Mike, and a lot of people have said that. Now, that would indicate that somehow I'm faking it, putting on a show. But radio Mike is as honest as mellow off the air Mike. It's the same thing. It's just enhanced by the subject matter.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say you're like an EKG. So, like, with a sudden heart like palpitation. So you're very, and then you off the team out here, and then you come back down. You go from angry Mike, and when you go to angry Mike, I go, I need elegant Mike. So usually radio Mike, I say I need elegant Mike. Elegant Mike works. Get angry Mike out of the room.
Yeah, but angry Mike is also effective because it's not forced. When I'm angry, I'm genuinely angry. Like there are things that bother me that I feel are unrighteous, and that's what gets me angry.
The Sicilian blood tends to spark it, like throwing gasoline on a fire.
Angry Mike, in my opinion, gets shit done for the greater good, which is why I'll always be thankful for Angry Mike. And I'll tell you, can I tell this story, Mike?
Sure.
I'm not going to say who it was with. However, there was somebody at 97.5 The Fanatic who was having on a guest who was accused of domestic violence. And this was off the air. And Mike stood in the cubicle area in the office and said to this person, "Why would you do this? You're condoning this behavior." This was off the air. And was basically like, this is not okay to give somebody like this a platform. This is not okay to basically gloss over what this man has done in his life. And that's the Mike that people don't understand, is that when Mike is on the air, it's not like, that's what I mean. He's not a fugazi. It's not fake. The same passion that he has for his convictions, it's off the air too. And you know, sitting there and seeing that, it's so important, right? Because that's the thing. You are angry, but you're angry about the right things. You're angry about the things that matter. And I mean, for as long as I live, the conversations we had, the topics that you tackled, like, I felt like whenever you were angry, it was always for the greater good. It was always because you wanted to make the world better. It wasn't like you were falling on the sword for some, like, you know, stupid topic or anything like that. It was always things that actually mattered in the world. And I'll remember that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because that probably got me in a lot of in trouble with the so-called bosses. But the way I looked at it in the show, like, I thought I earned enough clout in 30 years to say, like, how could I ignore issues, everyday issues that were important to people? Like, not just three people, but everybody. And I could, if I ignored those kind of issues, or just at least didn't bring light to them, then what am I accomplishing? You know, I wanted to accomplish something, not just by talking about a tight end pattern. You know, I wanted to accomplish something on the show. So that's what I tried to do. And unfortunately, not enough people do that, I don't think, because they're afraid to get in trouble, and they're afraid to push the envelope because certain people aren't going to like it. And that's a shame about where radio has gone.
Well, and
But anyway.
the time that we were on the air was like, it was honestly one of the most pivotal times in, I think, American history, where everything was just going to hell in a handbasket. It was absolutely insane. There had never been a time like it, what we were witnessing in the time that we were on the air. I mean, we watched January 6th unravel live. Remember, Mike? We were sitting there. People were calling us. You were trying not to talk about it. And then people were like, "Do you guys see what's happening on television?" And we were like, "Oh my God." You know, like, we lived that in live television with everybody else. We were living that too, you know?
And we were and here's a case in point. That day is when I saw Kurt Schilling, who was a friend of mine,
Yeah.
live tweet about how great the insurrection was, and it was filled with great patriots and all this stuff. And I lost my mind.
Yeah.
And I knew that guy, and I was his friend. And from that moment on, I advocated that they should take his number off the damn wall. I mean, that's how strongly I felt about it. It was an insurrection on the government. Now, people say, well, talk sports. Talk sports? There's a fucking insurrection going on. I'm going to talk sports? Like, how could I possibly?
At that time, 2020, I swear, like 2020, 2021, it was impossible because sports were secondary to what was happening in the world. And I felt, and I think that you felt the same way, and Tyrone felt the same way. We almost had like a moral obligation to not to address these things. We couldn't not address them just to keep people happy and talk about sports when there will never be a time like it again. It was unreal. We were in the middle of a time that was absolutely insane, and we were the only live
Yeah.
programming.
And here's what I wanted to do, Nat, and I know you wanted to do the same thing. The only thing I wanted to do is get people to think.
Yeah,
Get people to think that maybe there's another side to what you're thinking
yeah,
and to process that side. And that's especially when it comes to racism. People are afraid that they're going to be exposed as racists. And instead of taking it under advisement and looking within themselves, I tried to get them to think, maybe there are some things that you need to discover about yourself so you can correct it, so you can be a better human being and worship inclusion instead of being at odds with it all the time. And so hopefully I accomplished that. If I didn't, what are you going to do?
I think you did. I think we reached a lot of people. I think you made a lot of people think. I think we changed a lot of lives. I do. We would get emails. I mean, I still have letters that, were written to us and emails that were written to us where, especially during that pandemic time where it was like people were home alone and thinking, and all that they had was us. And I think that we did make a difference then, and it's the most important work I've done in my life thus far, I think. And I'm so proud of everything that we did. I really am. I miss it.
All right, let me just talk about your Twitter. Your Twitter is Natalie Egenolf at Natalie Egenolf, and you're very poignant in your Twitter. How do you approach your Twitter?
I'm just me. People ask me that too. I'm just like, whatever it is that I'm thinking, I just put out there. I've never been contrived in my tweets. It's just kind of however I'm feeling or whatever I want to comment on or think about or make a, silly Nat joke about. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I actually was just going to tweet about how we have to make sure that the climate change doesn't happen because In-N-Out Burger is coming to the East Coast. Did you see that? So we need to make sure that the world stays intact until 2026 and In-N-Out makes its way to the East Coast.
So how do you then handle, because I know this comes at you and it comes at a lot of females that are in this profession. Male hatred comes your way. Oh, what are you doing? You don't know anything about sports, blah, blah, blah. And they're very abusive on Twitter. I decided that I go right back at them to try to out-intelligence them and to ridicule them with words that, that are, I don't know. I don't know how I do it, but I try to humiliate them. But I try to humiliate them with words that don't look like it's like a clear humiliation. How do you handle this stuff?
So it actually took me a lot of years to kind of learn to either ignore or engage. I engaged for a long time because I don't think that people understand that it wears on you. And I don't care if you're like, little Natalie Egenolf from Northeast Philly or friggin' like Kim Kardashian, that shit wears on you. It does. You read that stuff and it's ugly, it's vile, it's evil. And some days, if you're having a bad day and you open your Twitter and you're seeing somebody call you ugly or fat or stupid, it's never okay, right? So I guess it depends on my mindset. Like if I'm okay, then I'm like, okay, that's fine. I can brush it off this day. But if some days you just don't feel like it. And sometimes I'll engage and go back at them. But I have a better handle on it now. But it took a lot of time for me to learn that because I don't think that you should ever adjust or be comfortable or accept that type of behavior on the internet. It's not normal and it should never be normal. I don't think people should always strive to be better. And it's wild, the vitriol that you get. And I think I get it in a different way than men get for sure, because they, even when my opinion, when I had that Wentz report, I got death threats, right? And it's like, why? Because I reported that Wentz was going to the Bears. Like, why would that require somebody to say that I hope you die? Like it doesn't matter. I chalk it up to jealousy, right? Because all these dudes actually wanted my job. And I'm like, well, you could have went and handed out flyers in the parking lot of the Wells Fargo Center in 2007 to get your start. Do the work, and then you'll end up there. But I think that that's a lot of what it is. But it's wild, and I mean, it's a day by day basis sometimes. And then I'm like, and I know that I'm smarter than you, so it's how I feel.
Yeah. 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 I used to say fuck off, but now I go like, so what I get is when I tweet something that's politically oriented, they'll say, stick to sports. And you weren't even that good at that. Right. And then so I'll write back, you know what I'm really good at? Blocking.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. And then I block them. That's what I do now. And they hate being blocked. Yeah, they hate it. They don't think that you're gonna ever block them. Like, hey, you're abusive. Bye. I don't need you in my life. I don't care how many followers I have.
I don't understand why people feel entitled to you or to somebody. Just because you are on the internet doesn't mean that you're entitled to somebody else, or that if you're using abusive language that you get to say that to somebody. It's bizarre to me. I mean, it is. It's weird.
All right, I just want to give them an example of the things that you tweet. Like today, you find a lot of tweets and then you comment on them. Like somebody tweeted about the bath oil beads in the 90s, where you put those bath oil beads in your bath.
I love it.
And you go, I still have reverence and I don't care. So you must have liked those bath oil beads in the 90s, right?
I love the bath oil beads.
And also it comes up today, somebody's tweeting with Charles Barkley and Barney on that SNL episode, which was one of the great ones. He was on that with Nirvana.
I did not know that he hosted that episode. I mean,
yeah, he has that episode with Nirvana, and he beat the shit out of Barney in a 1-on-1 game, and which was one of the classic scenes. Come on, Barney! Boom! And he would dunk on him, and Barney would fall down.
I've never seen the episode. I actually have to watch it.
It was classic, and you tweeted about that today. That there's not enough reverence for that episode. And you're right; it was one of the great episodes of all time. And we also
speaking Charles Barkley and Kurt Cobain. What more did you ask for?
Oh yeah, the Nirvana was on in their heyday, and so Charles would always come in. The last thing we'll talk about, Charles would come in and co-host every year. What were those like when Charles came in for you?
Well, what's so funny is the one year I was in the walking boot. The one, I think it was 2017. I was in the walking boot because I have bursitis of the right foot from high heels. That's what my foot issues are from. And, and Charles came in and he basically lectured me on the importance of proper footwear. I loved when he would come in. He was so funny and so real and so genuine and so kind. He was always such a delight. And he did. He said, what happened to your foot? And I was like, oh, I wore high heels. Now I have bursitis of my right foot from wearing improper footwear. He's like, don't do that. And then he went on this whole spiel and he told me about how it's important to have like arch support and ball support. And he just basically gave me a 10-minute lecture on the importance of proper footwear. So if you're wondering what Charles Barkley is like,
yeah, they were the best. I'm gonna miss those shows with Charles, obviously, because we used to do them in August. Well, listen, Nat, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Best of luck. Keep me posted on what's going on with you.
I will.
And I'm sure there's something around the corner that is monstrous for you. So just hang in there. Things will come to you. That's the way I've always looked at my career. I never really outwardly pursued anything. It's just kind of like an opportunity presented when you least expected it. So when that does, pounce on it.
Oh, I am. Don't you worry, Mike. And you're my inspiration, I promise. Don't you worry.
Oh, thanks, Nat. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you.
Bye.
It's the Mike Missanelli Podcast on the BetRivers Network.
All right, it's time for Picks of the Week. Listen, folks, hopefully you've been following my selections this year. Because I went 2-0 on my games last week. I only gave you 2 last week. I hit on the Steelers and the Bengals last week, which makes my record on the season 35-26. That's 9 games over 500. That ain't chicken feed, all right? So hopefully you followed all those selections, and you're ahead right now. And with that ahead money, you glom onto these two picks that I'm going to give you this week. I love the Chargers in the game, and I'll take the Vikings -3. As much as I thought the Giants had a chance to win this game, I'm going the other way now with that. I'm going to stay away from the big lines. I can't figure them out. But I'll go with the smaller lines, and I'll take the Chargers -2 and the Vikings -3. Those are my picks of the week. All right, now it is time for Mike Unleashed. Mike Unleashed can go in many different directions. And a story I read today cranked me up a little bit. I don't know. This is not really meaningful in the whole overall scope of life. But I remember as a young Mikey Miss, when I got a little sick, and my grandmother would say, well, you can only eat this one thing, and it is pastina with a little butter. She'd make me a nice little bowl of pastina with a little butter. The Ronzoni Company, masters of the pastine making, although sometimes you still get it with San Giorgio. I used to get the Ronzoni pastina all the time. Ronzoni announced they are stop making pastina. What? It's an outrage. The flour prices have gone up, and they say it's not worth it now to make those little round pastinas that everybody grew up on. It's Italian penicillin. If chicken soup is Jewish penicillin, pastina with butter is Italian penicillin for the young whippersnappers, the young skippies who feel a little tum-tum. Darren, am I right or am I right?
The best. Absolutely the best. I'm going to combine them a little bit here and say the chicken pastina soup with a good bowl pasta. Oh, the best.
Yeah, but if you don't have the soup, she'd always whip me up a little boiled 10 minutes worth of pastina, drain it, and put a little butter in there. Woo! And now it's gone. Ronzoni, what are you doing to me?
That's an outrage, man. It really is.
Total outrage. See, I save the important issues for everybody here in the Mike Missanelli podcast. All right, it's time for 3 questions for Mike. What do you got?
3 questions. The NFL season's 18 weeks now. It feels like every pro sports season is too long. If you had to cut one professional sports season shorter, which one would you cut?
Wow. Well, see, baseball is based on such tradition, and sometimes I don't buy into it. I always thought the season should be cut short, but there'd be such an outrage that this Americana thing that baseball carries. So I can't go there. I would cut hockey to just the playoffs. I would just
no regular season at all.
I would wipe away the entire of the regular season. And I was just going to the playoffs. No, I'm being facetious because I wanted to tweak Flyer fans. Probably the NBA season could be shortened. It's a really long season. It's a really large grind, and so many people now are going load maintenance and load management, all that stuff. Just shorten the season and get into the playoffs because they're the only things that matter. And you can say the same for hockey as well. If you shorten both those seasons, you put more emphasis on the playoffs. But you're never going to be able to shorten it because of the money factor and the home arena revenue and all that TV money and all that kind of stuff. So it's never going to happen. But if I had one sport that I was shortening, it would probably be the NBA because there's just too much load management going on these days.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's got to be. It's a tough sport, man. It's tougher than ever that you have to run and jump in this sport. It grinds you up physically.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, I'm sure you know them too, that they don't even pay attention to the NBA or NHL until like February, March.
I mean, look at Joel Embiid. I mean, like he's learned how to milk a season. Yeah. He really has. All due respect, and I don't want to be a doctor and comment on his injuries, but he knows what he's doing.
All right, that's question 1. Question number 2. I'm going to take quarterback out of the equation. What is the most important position in all of sports?
Quarterback is out of the equation. What's the most important position in all of sports? Well, I would say that the most important position in all of sports is point guard in the NBA. To me, if you don't have a point guard to orchestrate things on what you do, you're kind of you're just confused out there. So I would say point guard. I would say cornerback in the NFL, and
no blindside tackle, huh?
No, they're the only two I would go with. I would go point guard. I would go cornerback as the most important.
All right, very good.
And like people will say goalie. Yeah, goalie's tremendously important. I don't want to diminish it. Goalie's tremendously important, but I look at goalie like a specialty player. Like hockey is so up and down with forwards going up and down. A goalie is pretty stationary, and I get that he's got to be good and stop the puck, but he's doing it with less cardiovascular ability.
Good point.
Seriously, like he could be the worst in shape player on the team and still be a good player.
Okay. All right, here we go. Question number 3. This time of year, I like to read a little bit more. It gets dark early. Either one of twofold. Give me the last book you read, or give me a good book recommendation, or both.
I just read the Barkley book. We had our guy Timothy Bella on, who wrote the biography on Charles. Charles was not participating in the project, but I think Tim Bella unearthed a lot of information about his career and his life in general, which is very interesting. And Mike Sealsey's book, the same thing with Kobe in the early days of Kobe growing up. I don't normally read a lot of sports books, but I got both of those, and I made sure that I read that. But I my problem is that I try to start a lot of books because I get a recommendation to read this book, and so I'm already reading one, and I put that aside and I start this other one. So I've got a lot of unfinished projects, like this Shantaram book a friend of mine sent me. It's about a guy who escapes Australia as a convict and goes to live in India, which I'm always fascinated by. And I see where they turned that into a miniseries on it's on Netflix, I think, or Prime or Apple, whatever it's on. All of a sudden, it's a miniseries. So I guess I could catch up and do a George Costanza and watch the actual miniseries and tell myself I read the book like he did with Breakfast at Tiffany's.
That was nice. He had his nuts there.
He had the popcorn, and then the woman came in. He shushed her because he was busy watching. Yeah.
I was Breakfast at Tiffany's in that Seinfeld episode. That's 3 questions for Mike.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Time to close it down for this particular episode. Thanks very much to Natalie Egenolf for spending some time with us. I hope you enjoyed reminiscing with Nat. And again, you can get in touch with me. My Twitter is MikeMiss25. You can email me, mike@mikemiss.com. That's my website, which is mikemiss.com, where you can find information on my book, my children's book, which is The Adventures of Shima the Sheba, and information on the winery that I am become part owner of, the Great Natalie Vineyards in Cape May Courthouse, New Jersey, where you can order online and get the wine shipped right to you. There's a Mike Miss discount on the website if you look at it. You buy 6 bottles, you get 30% off. That's not bad. Anything else we got going?
No, I think I'm going to go get some chicken pastina soup from Ragazzi over here in Marlton.
Let me just say one thing about the pastina. Now that this has come out, people are putting boxes of Ronzoni pastina that they have on eBay and selling it for $20 to $25 a box.
Got to stock up, man.
Because it's all gone. They're not going to make it anymore. It's a total outrage, man. Bring back pastina. Free pastina. All right, it's been the Mike Missanelli podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks, everybody. We will talk to you next week. Back next week. Don't miss it.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.